Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining in Expo 2025 Osaka Kansai Theme Week's Agenda 2025, The Future of Community and Mobility, Session 1, Transforming into Sustainable Region and Cities. My name is Akiko Tsuchiya, and I'm your host for today's program. Expo 2025 Osaka Kansai organizes Theme Weeks, which are programs aimed at solving global-scale issues. Theme Weeks are special initiatives held during the World Expo. They take advantage of the unique setting where countries from around the world gather in one place for 6 months. During these weeks, experts from various fields, companies, government officials, and everyday citizens come together. They share their knowledge, exchange experiences, and engage in dialogue. The goal is to find solutions to global-scale issues, spark new ideas, and foster innovation. Together, we aim to create a future society for our lives in collaboration with the world. So there are 8 global themes featured in the Theme Weeks, and the current week is to talk about the future of community and mobility. Today's program is Agenda 2025 organized program, and the theme of the session is Transforming into Sustainable Region and Cities. This program is also in streaming at the Virtual Expo. So, without further ado, I'd like to invite the moderator and panelists to the session. Everyone, please come forward to the stage. それではどうぞ皆さん拍手をお迎えください。本日のモデレーターとパネリストの皆さんです。Thank you for joining us, everyone. Here are today's speakers. I'd like to introduce, first of all, Mr. Hiro Ichikawa, Professor Emeritus at Meiji University.
よろしくお願いいたします。
よろしくお願いします。Thank you. And also, Ms. Clara Sharpet, Head of Unit at OECD Regional Attractiveness and Migrant Integration.
Thanks a lot for the invitation. Thanks.
Thank you. And here is Ms. Osge Honor, Associate Professor at University of Cambridge.
Hello, hi.
Hello. And here is Mr. Tomohiro Fukuzawa, CEO at SkyDrive Incorporated.
よろしくお願いします。
おはようございます。And as a moderator, Mr. Andre Rodriguez Posey, Chair and Professor of Economic Geography at London School of Economics, Princesa de Asturias.
おはようございます、皆さん。
おはようございます。Thank you. We are pleased to welcome you here. And now I would like to ask Ms. Posey, today's moderator, to lead the session.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and thanks for the invitation. It's my great pleasure to be here with you today in this session, which is going to look into how can we transform our cities and regions into more sustainable regions. The session is going to be structured around 3 parts. There would be first presentations by me and by everyone in the panel. That will be followed by a series of questions and answers from me to the people in the panel. And then it would be the time for you in the audience to come and talk and ask questions. So please pay attention to everything that's going to be said. Think about what has been said and start preparing your questions, because there will be plenty of time for you to intervene. But let me start by framing the situation and where we are at the moment. How can we, as societies, given the challenges that we face, reinvent urban and regional futures? How can our cities and regions become far more sustainable in the age of sustainability? And one of the things that we have to highlight is that The 21st century is the century of cities, is the century of cities and regions. More than half of the population of the world lives in cities. Regions are becoming far more prominent, but they are at a crossroads. They're at a moment when we have changes and changes happening very, very fast. And one important change, if not the most important, is the question of sustainability. How relevant it is to have sustainable cities and regions today. So we had met, not today, but 20 years ago, sustainability would be something that would be good to have, something that many cities would aspire, but it would not be at the center of discussions. Today, 2025, and for the future, having sustainable cities and regions is no longer optional. Think about your city, think about your region. If your city or your region is not going to be sustainable from now on, it's unlikely to succeed in what is a more fragmented but also far more competitive world. So sustainability is no longer optional, is no longer niche. It's a fundamental social and environmental reality. Cities and regions face enormous challenges. They're at a crossroads, and they have to balance things like innovation, inclusivity, and be significantly very resilient against challenges. But of course, many of you, when you think about sustainability, you think about one dimension of sustainability, which is environmental sustainability. That would be, in my opinion, wrong, because sustainability is far more than that. It has three dimensions: economic sustainability, social and political sustainability, and of course, environmental sustainability. Let me start with the first one, economic sustainability. You see the map there? That's changes at subnational level happening all over the world over the last quarter of a century. And of course, you have many places, fundamentally in Asia, that have grown and have grown significantly and in a very rapid way, levels of more than 8% per capita per annum. But you also have, in a world that, and this is the good news, that over the last quarter of a century has seen more people out of poverty than ever before in history. We have 660 million people living in places that have levels of GDP per capita that are the same or below what they were in the year 2000, a quarter of a century before. Most of them are located in these black places, in the brown places, but the black places fundamentally in Africa, in Latin America, but take a look also at Japan, where in contrast to what you see in many parts of East Asia, the level of economic dynamism is less. And of course, in this situation, what we have is that we have more challenges. There are changes in the horizon, the emergence of AI, increasing automation, the rise of robotics, which is shaping the competitive advantages of cities. And in these terms, economic sustainability, it means that you have to be adaptable amidst volatility and not just generate growth or any type of growth, but growth that is sustainable and is resilient. And therefore, policymakers, businesses, but also citizens need to be pragmatic and foster strategies that would create ecosystems that would be sustainable, that would be inclusive, and that would be resilient in order to facilitate this economic sustainability. The second dimension is the social sustainability, which includes and is mainly inclusivity as a necessity. Many people, and even many economists across the world, would think that inclusivity is something that is also desirable, that perhaps is like altruism, that the most important thing is to grow, and then grow, if you grow, everything is going to work. Well, you have to grow in an inclusive way, because if you don't have sustainable urban development, you then enhance the quality of people, the quality of life for everyone, you're going to end up in a situation whereby there's going to be conflict, there's going to be tensions, there might be unrest, and that is the seed for lower economic growth and lower sustainability. And therefore, you have to bring everyone on board. So sustainable from a social perspective, but sustainability looks not just individual inequality, it also looks at interpersonal inequality. So you need to keep places dynamic. You have to prevent them from falling into a development trap. We got a map of Europe there of places that are less dynamic than they were in the past, but less dynamic than the rest of the country they're in. And those places are already creating trouble. You see a map of France where Paris is very dynamic, but the surrounding area around Paris is actually stuck. And that is undermining not just the growth of the whole of France and those places, but also the growth of the most dynamic core, which is in this case Paris. And finally, there's the environmental sustainability, which has also two dimensions. The first one is that you need environmental goals. You have a challenge, which is an existential challenge. Our climate is changing, and it's changing fast. So you need to have do the shifts to make our planet livable, and cities and regions have to be at the forefront of that. It starts with our ecosystems, but you also have to make sure that you are resilient and you're sustainable to the challenges linked to the green transition. The green transition means adaptability, and if you're vulnerable to the green transition because you have sectors that need to change, and you don't bring those sectors on board, you don't allow them to change, you're going to end up with no capacity to do the green transition. So in that respect, what we have is significant challenges in different dimensions of sustainability, and we need to search for solutions. And this is what we're going to propose today. And there are three types of solutions. The first one is the institutional solution, institutional and governance. In order to do this, we need far better governance. We need better institutions, more solid institutions, institutions that are rooted in flexible and forward-thinking planning, and that evolve and adapt to the complexity of our situation. This implies, in terms of cities and regions, a lot of coordination. Coordination internally within our cities and our regions, bringing on board economic interests, but social interests and political interests to the table and giving them voice. Coordinating across cities and regions so that horizontally, what we've done in one city or one region doesn't undermine what is being done in the others, and this is not a zero-sum game. This is something that we all benefit from. And of course, on top, you have a vertical sort of coordination in which local governments need to coordinate with themselves with regional governments and, in turn, with national governments and with international institutions, because they play an important role in that respect. The second type of solution has to come to mobility. Future mobility is not just about transportation. It's going to be defining the economic and social opportunities of individuals across the world. And of course, we need to put the emphasis on what is sustainable mobility and something that is equitable, that is accessible to all in our cities. So most cities and regions need to start rethinking, if they are not already doing, their traditional transport, because this is fundamentally going to reshape how our cities look and how our cities succeed in the future. So it's at the center of the strategy. It's not something that is peripheral. And of course, the third thing is the strategy itself. You need to have a forward-thinking strategy that is based on sound institutions, that is based on the conditions that you have on the cities, but not to make the cities the same, to transform and constantly reinvent your cities into areas where you have opportunities, and therefore also strategies that promote long-term sustainability with inclusivity and with resilience, not just quick fixes that might create jobs and opportunities today, but would create more problems down the line. So what are we going to do in this session? And we have quite a lot of experts. I'm just going to highlight here that we're going to be practical. This is not about an academic discussion. This is bringing insights from industry, from international organizations, from universities, but also from public and private foundations, about how can we rethink our cities and regions, how can our urban and regional futures become far more inclusive, sustainable through economic, social, and environmental development, and how can we create resilient, inclusive, and sustainable communities for the long term. And this is where we stand at the moment. We aim to present and discuss the challenges that cities and regions face and produce pragmatic and actionable insights, because our cities, in order to be successful, they must lead by example, demonstrating feasibility and impact, because if they don't manage to do it, they will not be cities. We need cities and regions that for the future would be highly sustainable, would be highly dynamic, and would have this condition to enhance the welfare and the well-being of all the inhabitants in the world, wherever they live. I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to start with the first intervention. Is by Professor Hiro Ichikawa, who has been presented. So, Professor Ichikawa, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'd like to just present. I need my material. Not yet. Could I have my slides? Yes. Global Poverty Index is just undertaken by our foundations. And this is mainly focusing on the urban policy and the competitive dynamics between the major global cities. And we are just choosing several major cities in the world. And to evaluate the power of a city, we have 6 urban functions, such as accessibility, economy, R&D, environment, livability, cultural interaction. And finally, we try to find the power of a city from the viewpoint of comprehensiveness. We started this ranking, we have 30 cities now, but we have 48 cities. And we have 3 types of committees, executive committee, peer review committees, and working committee. I'm just chair of this committee. And the criteria for selecting cities, 48 cities, we have 3 categories. First category is the top 20 cities ranked in the major city research. And second category is top 20 cities ranked in the major competitiveness ranking of the country. And third category is our own system, cities which our committee determined necessary. Well, this means more Asian cities are included from the viewpoint of our settings. And this covers almost the 40 cities in the world. Still, so many cities are requesting to be invited, but it depends on the time and the cost. And for evaluating, we are using 70 indicators. And 6 urban functions have a different number of indicator groups. In case of economy, this is 6. But in case of the R&D, it has 3 groups. This means some weighting here. And this is the result now. Top cities are London, followed by New York, Tokyo, Paris, and Singapore. These are top 5 cities. And other cities are very close to each other in the case of the scoring. More in detail about top 10 cities, 11 cities. And well, even we have top 4 cities, sometimes the position is changed. And furthermore, under the 5 positions, several cities are just switching sometimes. And this is the fluctuation in deviation value. When I started this ranking system in 2008, top city was New York, but was switched to the London after 2012 because of Olympic Games. And same thing happens for Tokyo. Well, now we have a 3rd position, but formerly it was 4th. But because of Olympic Games in Tokyo, some changes here. Well, even for the case of Dubai, they have Expo 2021. And finally, they have more power. Well, it might be some relation in this case in Osaka now. And more topics of top 5 cities. London has a kind of superpower. Well, as you can see, this kind of data, almost the more than every 6 function is more than average, especially for cultural interaction and very accessibility is the top in the world. And this some difference of the type, especially for cultural interaction, is getting better, and also the livability is better. Well, in case of New York, it's a quite different type. Well, New York has quite weak points for the economy, environmental issues, and livability. But on the other hand, such as the economy, accessibility around it quite strong. Finally, score just count second in the world. And especially for the livability, New York has a weak point every year. The third topic is Tokyo. Well, this is quite a balanced city. You can see here, Tokyo has nothing top in the world in any 6 urban function, but at the total, it's a balanced power, and finally, the third position keeps. And the cultural interaction is getting better now recently. This is a point to over the Paris now. Paris has also quite a similar type of Tokyo, but a very strong point in livability and cultural interaction. And furthermore, they have still some weak points also. But still, we have a battle between Tokyo and Paris. Singapore is also a balanced city in the Asia. And well, meantime of the COVID-19, just power was lost in Singapore. It's coming back now. And it's balanced also, very strong in accessibility. Well, this is a comparison between the top 6 cities. As I explained, London had a balanced but good in cultural interaction and R&D. Tokyo and Paris are similar each other. Singapore a little bit smaller. And 6th position is now taken by Seoul in Asia. Very close to Amsterdam now. This some examples about every function. Economy function. Just recovery from COVID-19 just happened, but it was quite slow. But Copenhagen, Dubai had a good progress now. So now GDP growth rate, doubling is top. Well, this is Brexit happens before, and Copenhagen and Cairo just following. Variety of workplace options. This is a share offices. A top in London, followed by Dubai and New York. For the research and development, well, top city is New York, followed by Los Angeles, Chicago. These are American cities. And number of startups. This is very strong in London, New York, followed by San Francisco. So this topic is very popular now in the world now for any major cities. Cultural interaction. Well, top city of the foreign visitors is now Paris, followed by London, Tokyo, and some other, including Dubai. Well, this is quite important topic to express about power of city now. Attractiveness of shopping option. This is famous in the world. Tokyo is a top, also for restaurants, top also. And well, it depends on cities. Livability. Well, this is a quite important topic for work style flexibility. Now, top cities are Johannesburg and Helsinki, Washington, D.C. Well, every time this is a quite big topic for Tokyo. Now we have 38, but Seoul is worse every time. They work too hard. It's a problem. And the price level. Well, as you can see, that Mumbai is the lowest and just Versailles is the highest. Well, it depends. It's changing because of the exchange rate of foreign currencies. And the environment. Well, this is a very important topic for Scandinavian countries, and not good for any mega cities. And urban greenery. Well, this is quite important cultural setting, natural settings. But Geneva, the top, and also the European countries, just good positions now. But these are just a rough explanation about topics. About this climate action, also the commitment is very strong now. I don't know the MX city, but very strong in the European countries now. Environment is just what price level? This is the price level for the livability. This is repeat it again? Yeah, okay. Oh, sorry about that. I pushed it. Reverse button. Okay. Okay. And I'm unfinished. Then accessibility is the last position about topic. Number of air passengers. Well, London is very strong in the world every time, followed by New York, and recently some other cities are coming through. And the ease of mobility by public transportation. This is best in Tokyo, followed by Paris and Berlin. Well, of course, the network of a subway system or some other important topic about that. Then, finally, I have to say, this GPCI, how this can be used. This is a case of a Japanese case. Cabinet Office uses this one. Also, Tokyo Metropolitan Government, City of Osaka, of course, of Fukuoka, Yokohama, they are watching. Well, they are not included, except Osaka and Fukuoka, but even for the other cities, just watching that. Furthermore, we are doing also the Japanese style. And for overseas cases, Paris, London, Vancouver, Dubai, just Beijing, Seoul, some other cities, just watching this data. It depends what the purpose, but it depends on the request to do that. But anyway, I understand this is a quite important indicator now in the world. We started this 28, more than 15 years now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Ichigawa. We've gone now from ranking cities and ranking some of the largest cities in the world to Dr. Claire Chabit, who's going to be talking about what makes a city and a region attractive and what makes a city and a region attractive beyond the size and the agglomeration that you'll have in those regions. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Professor Rodriguez Posse. So if I can have my slide, please. Just a small reminder. So the OECD, 38 countries. The headquarters are in Paris. Of course, Japan is part of it, but the number is growing. And for example, Indonesia recently asked for accession. So usually when we think about attractiveness, we always have an image of a country promoting itself towards foreign direct investment, thanks to tax incentives, and really trying to have this kind of image, while the time they are changing. And so this, if it works, I cannot move it. Okay, so these times we all know and we heard about. There is a growing uncertainty, geopolitical uncertainty, a variety of challenges. We all know the demographic decline challenges, not just in Japan, but everywhere, more or less in OECD countries, the climate change, of course, and the technological change. So vis-a-vis this type of change, it's no longer possible to just have, this national perspective. Why? Because the impact of all these events, they will affect regions and cities in an uneven way. So you need to adopt a place-based approach. To better understand what makes a place attractive, we consider and we innovated with a new methodology based on more than 60 indicators. So it's not a rivalry, with the number of indicators, but we gather a lot of comparative indicators across all regions in the OECD. By regions, the equivalent for Japanese prefecture, if you want to have an idea. So we consider 6 main dimensions: what make a place attractive in terms of economic attraction, in terms of visitor appeal, in terms of availability of land and affordability of housing, in terms of well-being locally, in terms of connectedness, including transport, of course, and in terms of natural environment. We build it, and for each of these dimensions, we selected some group of indicators, 14 detailed dimensions, and so on. Just a main message: the objective is not to rank precisely. The objective is really to offer to policymakers, decision makers, a tool which can help them identify their priorities for action in comparison to other regions. Thank you. This one better work. Yes. So what is the situation of Japan? Just take the example of FDI. You know, the economic model of Japan has historically been based more on exports and on attracting FDI. If you see the left side figure, you can see that the bottom line in red is the evolution of foreign direct investment in Japan from 2014 to 2023 is quite flat in comparison to other G7 countries. If you look on the right figure, we disaggregated this information for all G7 countries, and the first one is Japan. You can see that by region, you know, the level is quite small, but the higher level is the one of Kyushu. Why Kyushu? Because of the TSMC investment of the Taiwan semiconductor company. It created a lot of benefit, much more than what was expected. I think that the data is around a little bit less than 7 trillion of yens in 2023, not just because of this direct investment, but all the indirect investment for other companies, a kind of cluster model. If we consider also the new opportunities that exist for some regions, here we represent the evolution of greenfield FDI, you know, the capital expenditure in terms of percentage of regional GDP. What you can see is that when there is a green dot, it means that there is a positive, real evolution. The other one are not so growing, if I may. And you can observe, if you take the example of Europe, that the northern region of Europe and the southern one, they have these green dots. Why? Because of more or less wind energy in the north and solar energy in the south. So suddenly, some regions we were not at all visible on the global arena, they became attractive places to invest in for renewable energy. In Japan, there is now a policy to create some incentives for a wind farm investment, offshore wind farm investment in the north of Japan. But it's not yet fully developed. What we can tell is that it's not enough. Having the natural resources, even again, not enough. So what makes a place attractive? First, we took all this data and statistically analyzed the causality links. What we observed is that what makes a place attractive to investors depend on the quality of digital connection, the quality of rail and air transport, but above all, the presence of top universities. So the fact that with university you have access to skills, access to innovation is of first importance. So if firms want to invest where they can find talent, what makes a place attractive to talent? And we observed, of course, the quality of broadband, blah, blah, blah. But we also saw that you need to offer affordable housing. If not, people won't come, they won't stay. So it's a challenge. You have to take into account this affordability for housing. And visitors are a little bit more fuzzy, the creativity, the entrepreneurial system, but more and more the quality of the environment. So I've not took the right one. Yes, I will skip this one. So we took into account all this data, and we tried to provide this famous tool to policymakers. So it appears a little bit complex. It's not at all. If you look on the left side, I implemented for the region where we are, Kansai. Okay? If you look on the left side, you can see some red and blue dots. These dots are the value, the performance of Kansai in comparison with other regions. In red, you have comparison with other regions in Japan. In blue, comparison with other regions for all OECD regions. The more you are closer to the center, the weaker the performance. The more closer to the circle, the border, the best the performance. So the case of Kansai, a very good transport network, quality of digitalization, but the quality of housing, but natural and capital, natural environment is not so good, and the economy is not so strong, a little bit more, of course, for innovation. So we decided to become more granular and to understand inside Kansai the situation of the different sub-places, if I may. If you go to Osaka in the middle, territorial level 3, then you have, of course, a hub for innovation, very strong in innovation, very strong in transport, but critical for housing. and of course critical for a natural environment. So we ask ourselves a question: what about an adjacent region? And we took the example of Wakayama. And Wakayama is some kind of complementary with Osaka. Very good better in housing, very good in tourism, but less good in transport. So if you consider the possibility to create a collaboration between the two regions, you can increase the performance of the global attractiveness. We do not work only with this compass, statistical compass. We do a lot of case study, more than 40, and it's growing in 15 countries. And each time we provide policy analysis, governance analysis, as it was introduced by Professor Andres Rodriguez-Pose, not just data and compasses. So we also organize peer learning workshop seminars. And so we gather multiple experience. All of this is public. You can reach, if you're interested, I don't know, in the Galicia region in Spain, you can click Galicia, and you have the compass and all information we have about it. I selected for this presentation some good practices to mirror what we can, what others do. We have the example of the special economic zone in Lodz. There is a strong policy for special economic zone. So special economic zone means place-based investment, you know, incentive to have investment in some specific places. And in Lodz in Poland, they did it quite well. Why? Because they involved the ecosystem of SMEs a lot. If you go to the north of France, Hauts-de-France, they invest since a decade a lot in matching, you know, education offer with the job market need to transform the region, which was really a mining region, traditional industry, into a renewable energy hub, a region where we produce a lot of batteries and so on. And it works quite well. If you go in Norrbotten, in the north of Sweden, they have a lot of capacity and attractiveness vis-à-vis investment, but difficult to attract people and make them stay. So they join force across municipalities with education services, with businesses to make those people have a better life in this place. We also have the example of Scotland. You know, the Scottish government, part of the United Kingdom, they decided to invest a lot in green, you know, green investment, in particular for offshore wind energy. And so they had a whole system to attract investment, attract skills, offering fiscal, but not only fiscal advantage, and it works quite well. Everywhere, if there is something to be kept in mind, the challenge is more about attracting people. Because at the end, what makes an investor come and stay is the quality of the skill, the fact that there are people. So please keep focus on it. And of course, arigato gozaimasu. I have a brochure in Japanese, and for those who are interested in this presentation is also available in Japanese. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Claire Chaby. And of course, one of the things that you have highlighted is the importance of governance. And we have one of the experts on the issue of governance and institutions that I also mentioned in my introduction, Dr. Oscar Honor from the University of Cambridge. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. May I have my slides, please? Thank you. So, sustainability beyond survival, designing resilient and inclusive urban futures. When you look at presentations like this, it often sounds like a bundle of buzzwords that you hear everywhere, right? Sustainability, survival, resilient, urban future, designing urban future. Wherever you go, may that be a realm of policy or academic life, or politics for that matter, you keep hearing these words. So I will start by actually saying something that may surprise you and follow it with something that may be considered somewhat controversial. I am not an urban sustainability expert. And not only that, I don't believe anybody can be an urban sustainability expert. For the same reason, a doctor cannot be an expert in human body. We were having a very interesting conversation with Professor Mayo, who is in the third panel today, who told me yesterday that he's studying aging population at Juntento University in Tokyo, and I said, oh, so this whole longevity research is extremely popular these days. And he said, no, that's not what I study. I study aging population, but some other people study longevity. So if, for example, your knee is broken, if I take you to the best brain surgeon, the chances that you are going to get a good treatment is going to be close to zero, right? So when we think about urban sustainability, we face key challenges, all of which require very specific type of expertise that need to go hand in hand. So that there cannot be one unit of policy or one individual academic or a group or a laboratory as such that can come up with the ultimate answer to all of our challenges in relation to urban sustainability. Things like climate change impacts, social inequalities, economic disruptions, etc. Because these are not parallel crises necessarily, but they are rather converging symptoms of an unsustainable urban order. So everybody has pillars of urban transformation, sustainable urban transformation. These are the four that are very close to what Andrés Rodriguez Poza mentioned earlier. What we need for a sustainable urban transformation is political voice, spatial justice, economic dignity, and ecological limits to be taken quite seriously. I want just to park this for the time being, because I will circle back to this at the end of my presentation, and I hope that it will make more sense in a second. So when we're talking about urban sustainability, I guess the ultimate question we have to ask is, what is it to be sustained and for whom, right? Sustainability should not be about preserving decaying structures, but reimagining the city as a commons. How many of you are familiar with Elinor Ostrom governing the commons? So as a foremother, a godmother of public policy and economics to a large extent, Elinor Ostrom wrote this wonderful book in which she summarized explicitly eight points, which later then translated into 10 rules of governing the commons. So whenever you have common resources, there are certain challenges with its governance. How should you approach it? This notion has been around since the 60s. So when we think about urban sustainability, perhaps before coming up with our own creative ways of understanding how to deal with the issues of urban sustainability, we can take a step back and think about the city as a common good at large, an indivisible, inseparable unit, like human body precisely, right? Thinking about the human body analogy and specialization in medicine, right? That you have to have many doctors who are really good at many parts of the body in order for the human body to be resilient. Exactly in the same way we can think of city as an organism, a living organism, different functions of which has to be quite healthy all at once. The Ostrom's commons rules are extremely important. Things like defining clear group boundaries, matching rules to local needs and conditions, allowing collective choice, ensuring rule enforcement, applying graduated sanctions, etc., etc. So the policy take should be here that sustainability impact assessments that include political inclusion and equity metrics. We need not just carbon offsets. Of course, for that to happen, so in order for us to think about city as one inseparable unit as such and take action accordingly, we need to restore urban democracy, and we need institutions that listen. So what is the problem here? The problem is that urban decision-making increasingly bypasses local voices through quangos, development corporations, and privatized governance. The picture of the lady that you see here is Jane Jacobs, who fought in the 50s and 60s, Robert Moses, who was a very important planner, who wanted to implement quite a few mega projects, among which there was the Lower Manhattan Project, which was supposed to deal with increasing traffic congestion in expense of destroying several neighborhoods with different characteristics and functions that really constituted the essence of New York at the time. So actually she led urban activism at a time with no academic credentials, whatnot, but in my field now in urban and regional economics, she's considered to be the greatest urban thinker of our time. And the policy design, the way she recommends for sustainable cities is requiring things like participatory budgeting, urban assemblies, deliberative planning mandates. This is not an exhaustive list, of course, but some ideas for how to think like Jane Jacobs. Because if you don't do that, people start feeling rather disappointed in places that they live in, and you end up with cities that resist, that manifest their discontent with the way the city and the country at large is governed. So this is a picture from basically the Gezi protests in 2013, which turned Istanbul's Taksim Square, the most popular square in the largest city in Turkey, from a contested development site into a powerful symbol of resistance. And it all started with a group of young university students contesting a major development that they were planning to implement in the main square of the city. And later it spilled into this huge democratic set of protests, not only in Istanbul but everywhere in Turkey, where millions took to the streets in order to transform the urban fabric into a shared platform for their demands for justice, democratic participation, and ecological care. And if the central government really refuses to deal with this level of resistance to top-down approach, it really does spill on to other places with similar political discontent, which is obviously the expertise of Professor Andres Rodriguez Poza, which could be a topic for another conversation, perhaps. But this led to the mayor of Istanbul to change in 2019 with somebody who actually listens the people. So had a lot of people led projects, very people-based approach, who later gained so much attraction so that he started to be considered to be the only viable candidate against Erdogan in the presidential campaign. And for that, he's in jail right now, as some of you may have been following. A good friend of mine, Ekrem İmamoğlu, I'm referring to. So one minor issue I wanted to touch on while I have the opportunity, of course, is about belonging and spatial integration. And a major sustainability matter here in the story is about migration, because cities are increasingly popular anywhere in the world as an empirical regularity. This is not something that we should fight against, but we need to understand the dynamics of it and see how we can adapt to it. Because when we talk about migration, we don't only talk about domestic migration that happens across the different cities of the same country, but increasingly so we talk about foreign migration. And in migration research, including the very own empirical work that I have been engaged with over the past nearly 10 years now, we see that migration into a country is rather a meaningless concept to study once you start looking at the spatial concentration of migrants in a small number of places and what kind of stress that actually migration may impose on particular cities and particular parts of the cities. So urban sustainability, while it likes to talk about diversity, it often wants to avoid the more tricky and stressful topics like segregation, informal housing, and parallel institutions. So we have to think about migration as an extension of belonging and spatial integration quite a lot. To wrap up, I had the urban resilience in my title, not because I like the term resilience as a buzzword, because I think resilience is, as us economists say, is a necessary but not sufficient, but necessary condition for sustainability. And the resilient system is a system with redundancies that are built into it, right? So if you have shortages in certain capacities that relate to these 4 pillars that I referred to at the beginning of my presentation, it is not possible to succeed at particular fronts of sustainability. Otherwise, we would end up being like Sisyphus, trying to bring the ball up to the mountain, and perhaps it's not about reaching to the top that matters, it's about keeping the ball at the top, right? So maybe the shape of the ball is wrong or the mountain is wrong at the end of the day. So you cannot plan for the long term in a city where nobody can, for example, afford to live next month. And cycling back then, like I promised, cycling back to the 4 conditions of urban sustainability, we need political voice for participatory institutions and inclusive planning. We need spatial justice in order for us to understand the use of public space and how we can protect public space. We need to really think careful about the economic dignity. Beyond the metrics of GDP, we must start thinking more about circular economies. And obviously, it's at the end of the day, it's an optimization problem, right? And we have constraints, and we have ecological limits, ecological constraints within which we have to think about urban sustainability. So to sustain a city is to sustain its citizens' right to imagine, inhabit, and transform it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Honor. And of course, we were highlighting at the beginning that one of the key dimensions to make a city or a region sustainable is its transport. And of course, we have Tomohiro Fukuzawa with us, who is one of the leaders through his company on rethinking transport in cities. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor. Hello, my name is Tomohiro, founder and CEO of SkyDrive, a startup company of air mobility, which started 8 years ago. So at first, I joined Toyota Motor Company soon after I graduated university. And after that, I loved mobility, but at the same time, I wanted to make some innovation to mobility. And even though there are so many innovation in IT sectors, but no innovation for automobile. And then we started making some prototype, and after that, we get investment and started the startup. In those days, I just wanted to make some science fiction world, like flying to the sky is very fun. But thinking of the message the panelists showed, so there are so many diversity in many cities and so many each problems in each cities. And so mobility have to have some diversity too, so that each city want to its unique mobility to fit in to make the world better. And I believe this advanced new mobility, air mobility, is one of the new mobility for diversifying in the future. So let me introduce mobility. So we at first made this prototype at first. So this is drone type one-seater mobility. It has 8 motors around and battery in front and back. But we use many drone parts. But drone parts or drone reliability or safetyness is much less than that of aircraft or helicopter. So to make this mobility as our daily life, we are trying to make the reliability level or safetyness level same with aircraft level. And also we get certification to start business. And from this April, we have a demo flight in Osaka Expo. So this is a flight of mid-April in Osaka Expo's vertiport. And then not only on Osaka Expo site, but also we are flying in our Aichi Prefecture's test site. So we have 2 prototypes. One is colored, and the other one is not colored, CFRP itself. And we have this 3-seater model flying, and with 12 rotors or propeller in front. So, and at the back, there's a battery. So we are now developing this vehicle to start business around 2027 or 8. And our vision is that taking the lead in the once-in-a-century mobility revolution. So 100 years ago, new mobility comes like automobiles or airplanes or trains, and it changed the industry and also daily life. And but there are no innovation for the last 100 years. And then now we make the mobility to the air in our daily life. So we have many engineers coming from automobile sectors, aviation sectors, and battery sectors, and have 200 or 300 engineers from 20 countries in Japan. And to make a new mobility, not only vehicle itself, but also some ecosystem is very important. So we collaborate with lease companies, insurance, or control system, or charging infrastructures. So we are now trying to make a whole ecosystem with our stakeholders or investors. And in Expo, it is a very, very good timing as, especially in Japan, many people are very conservative, but in Expo, the theme is an experimental event for future world. So it is very good to make the demo like that. And we have an air mobility station next to US pavilion. So now more than 200,000 people are coming to our booth to see our vehicle. And please, yeah, you come to our booth too. And so we want to explain about the eVTOL. eVTOL is electrical vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, sometimes called flying car, but the definition is eVTOL. And so now we use many automobiles, but it makes some congestions, or if we have to have load so that to go to somewhere, and also railway by train to go somewhere. But we can fly with the aircraft, but we have to go to airport, and the airport is sometimes very far and has to have huge places. And eVTOLs make us possible for daily life transportation with air. So like drone, we have three main features, like battery-powered, simplified operation, and autonomy, and vertical takeoff and landing. And especially battery-powered makes a low-cost, low-noise, zero emission, and those make wider use of air travel as convenient means of local transportation. For example, if we compare with helicopter, we have one third of noise, weight, and price. And that is a goodness. And weak point is range is not so far right now because we use battery capacity. So around 30 to 40 kilometers is our range. So last 1 mile or regional transportation we make with this vehicle on demand. And of course, thinking of CO2, much less than helicopter or electrical vehicle, because we can go from A point to B point directly, not by road in the longer way. And also, as we are very quiet vehicle, we can have many rooftop helipads. So for example, in Tokyo, there are 70 rooftop helipads, but almost none of them we can use with helicopter in our daily life because helicopter is too noisy and it makes sounds to surrounding building. But with eVTOL, much less noise, so we can use those kind of helipads. So it makes our daily transportation very well. And for example, in Osaka Metro is trying to collaborate with us to start services. So one of the route example is Shin Osaka Station to Expo area or Universal Studio Japan or IR area around here. So with our vehicle, we can fly from Osaka Station to here around 50 minutes. So we came here by one hour or less, so it makes 1/4 time. And also the ticket price is around $100 or like that, so we can afford them. So such kind of things, regional air taxi started at first, and then more and more vertiport, and finally we can go any point to any point very smoothly on demand. And for example, the other case is in Kyushu. Beppu and Yufuin is two major hot spring place, and it takes about 1 hour by car or train, but flying 50 minutes, and we can enjoy very good scenery. So this kind of potential route, railway company are thinking in Japan, for example. And there are already vertiport of eVTOL in Osaka area too. And Osaka Metro-san has a on-demand bus too. So they will now making a use case like this. So when we want to go somewhere and we make a reservation with smartphone and get an on-demand bus and come to a Vertiport and check in with face very quickly and wait in a lounge and time has come, we go to eVTOL. So this station is next to Expo right now. And we get into the vehicle and fly to Osaka station in 15 minutes. So this kind of infrastructure is little by little set in Japan and around the world and begin to start business in a few years. And not only Japan, but also in other regions, we are doing business development like UAE. So this kind of, this company is doing helicopter tourism right now, but to transport this to zero emission systems to make the world better. And also, not only Japan, but Asia and US is our main area market. So we are doing these kind of new transportation in each sectors. And this is a final image of eVTOL. So this is like a flying car. Now we just flying, but in the future, not only flying, but taxiing we want to use from door-to-door mobility. So this example is going from Kamakura city to Roppongi, and it takes 1 hour by automobile and 15 minutes by eVTOL flying car. So this is an image of the future around 2040. So in the beginning of eVTOL, in a few years, there are few vehicles flying, but in 2030 or 40, so many vehicles are flying, and now government are trying to have an air corridor so that no collision or jam is happening. And in 5 years or 6 years, autonomy driving will start, or remote pilot will start, and air corridor is controlled by air control. So this is a world we want to make, and as we are going to Paris or UK or Tokyo, US, every regional has its rule or its culture. So for example, Paris, it is difficult to fly over the air with helicopter right now. So it might be some challenging. And in Indonesia or Thailand, it's much easier. So it depends on the region to region, but to have a conversation in each region to make a better transportation issue together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and very interesting images of a different future. A lot of food for thought in these sessions. Start thinking about your questions, but before we go into the questions, I have some issues that I want to raise with each of you, because I think in many ways have actually raised a lot of interesting issues that we need to think about more. Let me start with you, Professor Ichikawa. You presented, and you are leading one of the main urban rankings that we have right now in the world, which is the Global Power City Index. Every time that it comes towards the end of the year, many cities across the world are just eagerly awaiting the results. They think it matters a lot. But to what extent do you think that rankings like yours and other rankings of cities and of regions are today relevant, and if not, how they should change to become more relevant?
Well, first of all, we started this ranking system in 2008. And who are the users? Who are the requests to use this kind of index? And more than 15 years now we are finding that for policymakers, they need information as a good benchmark of the priority of policies, first of all. But secondly, for the investors who are not only that, but generally speaking about the business persons, if they want to invest, which city is good? So this kind of data is very important information for them to decide. That's a topic today. But now, the topic is sustainability. So how we have to explain about sustainability, just the fronting of the result of global city rankings. And in case of global city rankings, the most important topic is, I have to say, it should be prosperity of cities. Any city try to make a more stronger, better, richer, anything. It can be, well, maybe just say it's one word should be in the prosperity for cities. But at the same time, even if city is getting better in terms of economic power, is it good for people? This is a topic just talking about sustainability. Today, you and other professors explained about several definitions about sustainability. That is economic, environmental, or social. And if I explain about our GPCI from viewpoint of sustainability, this should be included in our ranking system. But as a total, our final purpose is what is the comprehensiveness of power of city. So it might be included from the viewpoint of sustainability, but still it might be not different, but some including such kind of ideas, but not only focusing on the sustainability. Well, as a total, anyway, if city keeps the power of anything, this city is sustainable. If so, if I use a sustainability as a definition of something, still it should be effective for our result. But anyway, it depends on the people and it depends on the organizations. So sustainability is a very convenient word, important word, but still I have to say it depends on the people, how they interpreted this word, this expression.
But you already, I mean, you're talking about the need to include more sustainability.
Yeah.
But the Global Power City Index has 70 indicators, many of which address sustainability. You're asking us, what does it mean, sustainability? But what does it mean for you and the Global Power City Index? What do the sustainability indicators in your index encompass?
Well, finally, cities should exist for people. But if I say people, so many type of people. And especially for the environmental issues, this is quite important topic for some people who have some problems in environmental problems. But when I'm talking about this kind of data, it should be included, but as a total, finally, what is good for city? So this might be, well, not this is not a good but this should be quite a total idea for total people. And not easy to say a personal the viewpoint. This is our understanding so far.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Keeping on sustainability, Dr. Shabi, of course, we have highlighted, and several of us have highlighted, that cities and regions today cannot not afford to be sustainable. They have to be sustainable or face difficulties, perhaps unrest, perhaps decline over the long term. You are launching this attractiveness compass, and there you're also thinking and have thought thoroughly about the issue of sustainability. What are the different parts of sustainability that are included in your compass, and how important are they?
Thank you for this question. For us, sustainability is a condition for attractiveness, if I may. And we observed, for example, in large cities, we discussed with São Paulo in Brazil, and they are a little bit afraid because the quality of life, the environmental degradation of the city may lead some investors to move, may lead some people to move. So it's not just a question of large metropolitan areas and to become more attractive. It's a condition to stay attractive for the bigger one. For the other one, it's also very important. Andres, you have shown this map with a region in a development trap. If you want to transform your model and become more attractive, you have to seize opportunities like, maybe renewable energy, like hosting talent, like attracting, SMEs and startups. So there is a variety of action you may take. In terms of indicators in our work, we have, of course, different type of environmental indicators. For example, we put a distinguo between the quality of natural capital, the fact that there are green space and so on, and the quality of the policy vis-à-vis environment. Do you implement, recycle? Do you provide renewable energy for energy in your city and so on? We also take into account when we measure the health, situation of city, we include indicators in terms of quality of air, because of course, the less quality, the more diseases. And it's becoming a condition for people to opt if they want to come and stay or not. We also take into account, the quality of land. If you're an investor, for example, an industrial investor, you need land. You do not have a manufacturer in small space. You need land, but you will not invest in a place which is a risky one, risky vis-à-vis flood, risky vis-à-vis drought. So these questions are more, and the insurance company, they will not cover your risk. So as an investor, you take more and more into account this quality. So if I may, sustainability pervades a little bit everywhere. It's a condition for attractiveness, it's a condition for well-being, and it doesn't just matter for large cities, but it matters for all.
Okay, you just finished it saying it doesn't matter for large cities and matters for all. What you're proposing is that every city should have a strategy. Can today cities and regions survive and thrive without an adequate strategy? And if you were, for example, to be advising the Japanese government, what would you advise, and not just the Japanese government, but Japanese cities and regions? Where should they have a strategy? Should they just limit themselves to the big cities, so the Tokyos, the Osakas, the Nagoyas? Should they encompass intermediate cities, or should they cover the whole country, especially in areas that are suffering and are more remote and losing out over the long term? Please.
Thank you. This is a $1 billion question. If I could help Japan, I would be very glad for it. Just think about it. I heard that 1/3 of the population in Japan lives in the area of Tokyo. And it's a little bit growing, okay? Growing in attractiveness, but also extending, sprawling. Is it a future for the country? Does it mean that all the other places will have to be abandoned, just with old people? So there is always this solution. Let's provide them with the good techniques, digital access, digital health, and they will be happy with it. It's not the case. So there is a need to balance attractiveness and pay more attention to what we call in the jargon the intermediary city. There is a future for intermediary city to create hubs. And just, you will tell me, but Claire, we cannot suddenly have the best university. We cannot suddenly create the perfect network for infrastructure, rail, and so on, to make our place more attractive. You cannot, but if you join force, you can better. So I took the example of Osaka and Wakayama just back, joining force. It's between regions, but it's true also between cities. Neighbor cities, if they join force, they can exploit the synergy, the complementarities among them. Maybe they will be specialized in one sector. Maybe they will have education of a top quality for this sector, and it will create a hub, an attractive hub. And last but not least, there is a need also to open not just to Japanese talent, but also to foreign talent. And it's also an issue, if I may, in Japan. So as Professor Oakes told us, it's not, you know, the panacea, because if those people come and stay in specific segregated area, it won't work. But bringing talent, creative, diverse place is also a way that is exploited, for example, a lot in Canada, in Australia, and less and less in the US, but it's becoming risky for them. So just small examples.
Thank you very much.
Governance, just a point, sorry. Governance matters. The example I gave means that you have to coordinate. And so I think Oscar will
Well, I think that's important because so far we have had, you know, to know where you are in terms of your position. You need to have a strategy, but how good is a strategy without the right governance and the right institutions? And that's, Dr. Honor, your part of the topic. It's all about accountability, you said given voice, and participation and transparency. Can we have successful cities, successful regions, successful strategies if we don't have the right type of institutions and governance?
That's a very valid question, and thank you for asking. It's so that I can open up one of the things that I really couldn't highlight. And that's the eighth rule of the total of 8 rules of Elinor Ostrom, which is using nested layers of governance for larger systems, or as we sometimes refer as multi-level governance in literature. I used Claire's work and OECD's work in my political consultancy because you don't only want to know how a place is performing necessarily, but you want to have some hierarchical order within which you want to understand how a place is performing. I, for many years, worked with microdata, which allowed me to, dissect the cities into tiny, tiny blocks in Sweden, in particular, which is a spectacular data that hardly exists anywhere else in the world. So going all the way from like tiny corners of neighborhoods to the neighborhood, from neighborhood to the districts within the cities, to the city, from the city to the region within which the city is nested. So we have to think about space in layers, right? And I think that's quite relevant for most of the technology that's being developed in order to have a better sustainable city. But it also relates to most of the problems that we talk about. So when you are thinking about a city, you cannot think it in vacuum. You cannot think it in isolation. And that's why it's quite valuable to think about governance in an hierarchical order. So yes, every city has to have a strategy, but also every city has to have a strategy that is compatible with the region or the regional strategy for the region within which it is nested. And also every city has to have a strategy that is compatible with separate parts of the city that is feasible to implement. Otherwise, you would have what we call segregated sustainability. So I'm sorry for exhausting the same health analogy, but if you have a failing kidney, nobody will congratulate you and give you a medal for your very well-beating heart. Vice versa, that if you are thinking about the urban spaces that operate in an organic fashion, so should the governance. And unfortunately, I mean, that one of the problems with perhaps the city indices is that it encourages the cities to compete with one another, perhaps in realms where they are supposed to complement with one another at an increasing rate, if sustainability is the key issue that we have at hand.
Thank you. And one of the things that you raised that was very important in your presentation is the problem of rising discontent and rising unrest in cities and in regions. I mean, we live in the end in a country like the UK, where the discontent of other parts of the country, like the Midlands or the north of the country, has led to Brexit, and as a result of that has undermined the sustainability and dynamism of the south of England, the city of London, but also of Cambridge, where you work and teach. But you are a special advisor to the mayor of Istanbul, which is a city that has not been spared, as you highlighted, from this sort of unrest. Why do you think that these protests are becoming so much more common than they were just 20 years ago? And what is the solution, if you have a solution?
It's institutional blindness and democratic deficiency by and large, I must say. Some of you may not know about this, but Professor Rodriguez Poze sort of opened up, broke the flood, sort of the wall of the sort of dim, if it's the right expression. And there was this flood of interest in literature to study the relationship between how a place performs and how political preferences changes. So many other countries, so many researchers in other countries picked up this notion to look into why we see the rise in radical rights or populist parties, so much so that it is almost a global phenomenon of some sort. And in every case, almost, we see the same institutional blindness, that you have economists, almost all of which have a fetish towards macroeconomic indicators. So they look at the country and they try to understand how the country performs in terms of GDP per capita, how the trade works, how the welfare effects are going to look like for the country at large if you do the tariffs this way, but not that way. And all of a sudden, people realized that neither the positive externalities nor the negative externalities are not uniformly distributed in space. What a shocking news, right? This is something we knew about for a very long time. We just simply forgot about it. So it's a matter of remembering what we actually knew. I mean, most of the literature that I am referring to when I am thinking of multi-level governance, for example, is more than 100 years old. Things like central place theory, whatnot. I mean, these are from late 19th century almost. Yes, I mean, I think the reason, in short, the reason why we see so much spatial unrest, spatial political discontent, is that people do not have means by which they can manifest their discontent for the central government, and it all gets mixed up in their emotional virtual space, so to say, and it's manifested through other channels that are righteous or not, but that's the situation we are at right now.
Well, thank you very much. And last but not least, Mr. Fukuzawa, you have presented us a vision of the future, a technological vision of the future, with flying vehicles and new modes of transportation. But when I started my presentation, I was saying, well, transportation is not just crucial for environmental sustainability, and your electric vehicles are environmentally sustainable. How do they matter, and how do they make a difference for the sustainability of cities and regions and for individuals? How do they improve the economic sustainability and the social sustainability of our cities?
Yeah, thank you for your question. And, basically speaking, we always say decarbonizing or like that, but thinking of implementation to each region, it is different to region. For example, as you mentioned, so many people are coming to Tokyo or Osaka, and but the population is down in Japan totally, and aging population is happening. So it means in local area, less and less people are living there and aging. And also there's a fact that the infrastructure cost, for example, the cost to make 1 kilometer road is the highest in Japan compared with other countries, because there are so many mountains. It means we have to make so many bridges and tunnels, and it makes the investment of infrastructure cost is very high. So, and most of them are developed 40 to 60 years ago, and now little by little it is now breaking or have to retain. So we have to pay so much infrastructure cost in very rural area. So in that case, such kind of mobility of air without needing any infrastructure is very, very beneficial. So in that kind of area, that is a sustainability reason. And other area, for example, in Indonesia, there are so many laws and traffic jams and difficult. They are thinking of moving capital city to other area with so much money. But if we have using air for transportation, it has much more efficiency and have a more sustainability. So yeah, in region to region, it has its own problem, and sometimes we can solve it with new transportation.
Well, I think you more or less have answered my second question, but I want you to elaborate, because in your presentation, most of your examples were about big cities. Transfer from the airport in Osaka to the city center,
Yes.
movement within Tokyo, but now you're highlighting that this might be a strategy that is good for the big cities, but is also very good for smaller cities,
Yep.
for rural areas, and for towns. Do you think that by doing this in both areas, you're going to end up with a considerable different mode of transportation across the board in places like Japan, whether you're in Tokyo or you are in the rural areas in the most remote parts of Hokkaido, for example? And is that going to make us, or the Japanese society, and not just Japan, beyond, because you want to expand beyond Japan, is it going to make the city, not just your firm, more competitive, but the city is far more sustainable and far more resilient, and also far more attractive for investment and new firms?
So yeah, so region to region, the condition is different. And for example, in Japan, Osaka, I personally think Osaka is one of the good social acceptance region. So if new things happens, people don't get so upset or like that. And it is also the aspect we can implement new mobility to make the problem better or not. So and we sometimes compare Paris, New York, Tokyo, and Jakarta, and yeah, the society and government people's initiative or mindset or aim is different, we think.
Okay,
So,
thank you
yeah.
very much. I think we have a lot of issues that have been raised. There's now time for questions, and there are two types of questions: the questions that would come from you, from the audience, or the questions that can come online. We got translations, so you can get the questions either in Japanese or in English to any of us, especially to the four panelists over here. And what I would do, and I would like to ask you, is to please raise your hand, say who you are, what do you do, and then ask a question. And when I say a question, is not to make a statement, it's to ask a question and try to do this exercise. Start your thinking about why, how, to what extent, as a way to start your question. So who wants to break the ice? Who would like to ask the first question? Yes, please go ahead.
Mr. Pose, thank you for letting me have a question. I'm just a very normal Osaka citizen, and I do a little bit of work at Expo and at the trade organization.
Can you say your name and?
Sorry,
Yeah.
my name is Shiori. And I have a question to, maybe this is a question to all of you, but so the discussion for today, I learned about the importance of governance and institution involved in creating a sustainable city. But at the same time, I think that the mindset and actions of people are really important, and in terms of citizen level, as in citizen level. And in that context, how can this Expo 2025 be more than a showcase, but how can it help shift not only the systems or technology, but also into a public awareness or behavior toward more sustainable future? That's my question.
Who wants to take the question first? Who wants to go first on this?
I mean, one thing, of course, every geography is different in its nature, and there's evolutionary process by which certain neighborhoods are formed. But one thing I extremely encourage both the policymakers that I am communicating with, as well as the local politicians, is to stop talking and start listening more and be on the field, basically. And when I switch sides and talk to more community-led initiatives that are operating either at the small neighborhood level or district level within the cities, or in small or medium-sized cities, there is always this insanity about them competing with the nearest neighbor they have. So probably the best way to go about is circling back to what I mentioned earlier, is to make people aware that it's not a zero-sum game necessarily, particularly not if you are in the same urban system or in the same regional system. So every time we were traveling outside of Turkey before the arrest of the mayor, what we were trying to explain to the important people that we interacted with in these cities, or that he was interacting with in these cities, to make them aware that so this other city sitting right next to you is not your enemy. Actually, it is a resource for you. It is untapped potential for you, particularly if you consider that that city probably has things that you don't have. So you have to start thinking about what can we do together as two neighbors. You may be two neighborhoods in the same city, you may be two cities in the same region, like I said, so this has to be taught in levels. But you have to actively remind people that it's not really a zero-sum game at all.
Yes, please, Claire Chabi.
Just a brief comment. You know, I'm French and I live in Paris. And so recently we had the Olympic Games, and you know, some months before, Parisians who have the reputation to be always complaining, never happy, everybody spoke about leaving the city before the Olympic Games, it will be a disaster, blah, blah, blah. And finally, it worked very well, and it worked very well because the feeling of trust among people dominated among other things. And for the first half of my life, I saw Parisian people helping the other, accepting diversity, speaking other languages, and we were all living like a miracle. So I don't know how long it could last, probably not long. But this question of mistrust and the fact that you can believe in others is something which is very important. Very important also to believe in the young people. They are the one who connected easier, you know, who wish to have a different life, to learn from others. And in recent statistics, what we observed, for example, in France, is that young men have a lot of more mistrust than young women. So young women often have more trust in others, even if they are more dissatisfied by life. So this question of adapting the response and trust people is something which is probably very important.
If I may intervene, unless someone else, but I think it's an important. Sorry, Professor Chua, you wanted to intervene, sir? Yeah.
Well, I'm just Japanese side and answer about this topic. And from the viewpoint of Expo, if we have, several good stories about that. Same in here in 1970, just the power of Osaka is getting up. And not only that, in 2009, Shanghai down, and quite good results they have. Also recently, the Dubai is getting up the power because of Expo. This is just a general topic about that. Whenever talking about the power of, so focus on power anyway, okay? Osaka, unfortunately, it's getting down. It's a long term already. Sometimes status quo, but unfortunately, not good news. But my impression now is that this Expo is very important topic, event, anything about that, to the future of Osaka now. So only this is half a year. The point here is after that, what you can do, what Osaka should do. Several topics about that. Now recently I was just interviewed by the media. How about nighttime economy in Osaka? Just I'm here now, I explained about that. Of course, several people coming to the Dotonbori area. But as a total, Osaka doesn't prepare such kind of new topic. Wherever you have more inbounds, how you can accept, how you can switch the power to the future of that. It's quite an important time. But still, just in May, you have a time. You should start now. Even for that, like in case of many areas, not only Doton, but it's a quite small area. Mid-Osuji could be good for nighttime to invite people. Such kind of reaction is quite important for the future of Osaka now. So my answer about your question is, it's a good time for Osaka people to think that more than Osaka people, Osaka governance, Osaka people, including everything. So they are just announcing this kind of ranking system, and including Osaka. But unfortunately, it's never coming up, okay? But maybe next year it should be coming up. But still, you stay in about 30 to 33, but close to the Taipei. But maybe good time to change the policy, think about the future. And the topic is sustainability, but sustainability includes the future of the city, the power of anything. So just I would recommend and I would expect you should do now. Very good timing. So many people here. So you have to change every year, including this Bay Area. Well, same topic now in Tokyo, how we can promote the Bay Area now in the future. So same topic you have to understand what's happening now. Sorry about that.
No problem. I think, if I may, your question is very relevant, but I'm going to start just giving a quick answer, starting where Mr. Fukuzawa finished. He said, Osaka is the right place to start a business because the people are open and are open to change. It's the place in Japan where you adopt technology and change is better. And this is where the Expo comes as important. The Expo is highlighting a view of the future, a view of future life, of future technology. What are the changes? But as we have shown here, new technology is nothing if it's not adopted, if it's not accepted by the population, if the population doesn't have a say on it. And this is where the Expo and the Agenda 2025 is playing an important role, because it's combining this idea of showing the new technologies and having an open discussion about what is the best way, what are the consequences about adapting those technologies. And that's where I think the legacy of the Expo, after the end of the Expo in September, where it can be longer lasting. How can we then transform the area of Osaka or Kansai or many parts of Japan and even the rest of the world based on the technological capacities that we have, but what are the mechanisms that we need to implement in order to make sure that that technology works in a way that makes our cities and our regions far more sustainable. We can move now to a second question. I don't know whether there's anyone here who wants to ask a second question. Please go ahead. Just wait for the microphone, yes.
こんにちは。インドネシアパビリオンから来ました。ポンチョと申します。よろしくお願いします。で、友広さん、福沢さん、ちょっとスカイドライブがお便利ですね。ジャカルタのインドネシアにすごく賑やか街なんですね。で、毎日も交通渋滞です、インドネシアに。質問が、スカイドライブをこれまで使用したことないの国で、どのように導入できるでしょうか。一応よろしいですか。
Sorry, I didn't get
ちょ
the
っと
question.
日本語まとまりです。
So how to implement this kind of new mobility to Indonesia?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead because my machine stopped working, and so just go ahead.
すみません。すみません。
Thank you very much.
ありがとうございます。
So in Southeast Asia, so when we go to each countries, at first we investigate what is the condition of aviation in each countries. And the tendency is that in Southeast Asia, we can fly helicopters in the city, but the operator who can fly around the city is very limited because sometimes it is very dangerous for some terrorist activity or like that. So only a few operators can fly over the city with helicopter. And as a result, people don't use helicopters or aircraft in a very metropolitan area. But more and more operators are trying to use helicopter, for example, from international airport to downtown or like that. And to do that, operator have to have a 5 or 10 years business so that he is synced as a reliable operator from government on the citizens. And then they have a heliport right next to the international airport, and they can start flying to the building. And sometimes in New York, for example, there was a helicopter air taxi 50 years ago. But soon after, they have an accident in the building area, and the impact was very big, and the helicopter service was suspended for a few years, and then started again. So like that, social acceptance is very important, and economical situation, it is very good in Indonesia, as there are traffic jams or pains. So we are now trying to have a cooperation with heli operator who are trying to make many routes, for example, from international airport to the downtown to other cities, and then trying to transport from current helicopter to new mobility that is more better for emission or noise or like that.
Okay, anyone else wants to intervene on this? If not, any questions from the audience? Because there are questions coming online. Let me just, there are now questions from the audience. Let me just start with a question online, and then I'll go in a moment over there. There's a question coming online. It's saying around the world, there's a need to respond to natural disasters caused by the effects of climate change. Do you think that Japan's experience and lessons from disasters such as earthquakes and tsunamis can be applied to the international community? What can we learn from the Japanese case? Professor Ichigawa, if you want. Or international, yes.
Well, when I just talking about from the viewpoint of sustainability, if you want to make a more high level of such kind of topic, it costs. And also in the Japanese case, for talking about sustainability, disaster is a quite a big issue. And not only earthquakes, but tsunami also and also volcano something. Well, so every time we have to think about that and make some institutional system. Already Japanese architectural code is strict in the world. It means it costs much to construction. So whenever talking about sustainability, it costs first of all. And furthermore, we have to think about actually earthquakes comes. Volcano happens sometimes. So it's a realistic topic. Whenever you make any policies, you have to include such kind of ideas and just against what kind of thing you can do that. This is our Japanese experience. And already so many research and many policies to be adapted. And finally, we understand it costs much. So what is the limitation of paying for that? This is a kind of selection to decide. This might be now expression to the world, could be. And furthermore, final topic is resilience is an important issue. So we're talking about sustainability. At the same time, you have to think about the resilience, how you can endure anything. So kind of several options. Well, there is nothing perfect. So you have to find every time the better thing. and finally decided policies. So it means our Japanese policy is not perfect, but trial just making struggles and finally making something. That is answer so far.
Okay, thank you very much. There are questions from the audience. There's a woman over there at the back. The woman, yes, please, first.
Thank you very much for very interesting discussion. My name is Ai Wakamiya. I was a student of Professor Andres, and I'm working for the development agency. So I would like to ask about the attractiveness of city. Maybe this question will be to Ms. Korea. So I understand what you're explaining is attractiveness of a city consists of a very unique element of the region and city, but if we develop the attractiveness of the, for example, developing countries of, the rural area of developing countries, or even the lagging region in developed country, it will be very challenging. And when it comes to the real development intervention, the connectivity and infrastructure to that region comes first, and it's quite easy to discuss, but at the same time, after that, nothing happened, or to identify the other element, culture, or some kind of a very good resources, we very difficult to go beyond that connectivity. So if you have a very good example to identify the opportunity or attractiveness of that kind of region, I would like to ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this excellent question. You know, initially we began this work precisely to try to see how regions more than cities, because data at the city level are more difficult to be compared. But we tried to answer the question, how is it possible to make other than metropolitan regions attractive? And we saw, a variety of solutions across the region we worked with. Some invested a lot in tourism, okay? But forget it. If you just have tourism, it doesn't lead to sustainable future. You know, tourism rarely offers good jobs, very often damage environment. So if it's a solution, it's a solution to be really managed in a green way, if I may, and not concentrated in just some places, but also going more in the hinterland. Diversification of tourism is really strongly based more and more on cultural assets. So when you have a cultural asset to be exploited, you can think about this type of strategy. We have been asked, for example, in Guatemala by the region of Petén, which is a northern region full of Maya indigenous people, and they would like to use this cultural asset as an attractive driver. However, a little bit like in Costa Rica, if I may, preserving the resource, making the green an argument to come. But you're right, if there is no means to go, if there is no infrastructure for transport, it won't work. So there is conditionality in terms of infrastructure, which is very high, but not unique. This is also the message we have. You can invest on infrastructure a lot, but if you create a place from nowhere just with a train and some investment, it won't work if you do not associate a minimum access to essential services, to good education, to quality of housing, to quality of social cohesion. So this idea of the compass is really like a system, you know. So of course infrastructure matters, but not only, and join force with other. You can be placed on the road with other that people come and invest in or come and visit, and complementary becoming your partner too. We have several examples of that type in different regions in the world. Very glad to discuss about it.
Thank you very much. There was a question coming from the man with the cap over there. Yeah.
どうも、先生方の深い、見識にあるご意見、非常にためになりました。ランキングとか、あとガバナンス、それから他のモビリティ、いいんですけれども、今この世界で分断というふうに言われてまして、どっかの国のトップはビジネスマンであってですね、ポリティシャンじゃないというようなことを言われてます。今朝もニュースでムーディーズでエコノミックランキングが下がったというようなことはニュースで出てますけれども、やはりこれからこういうエクスポという場所なので、これからフューチャー、未来にわたってですね、先生方のメッセージをぜひいただきたい。言葉を変えれば子どもたちにこれから20年30年後子どもたちの世界になっていくわけで、そういう時に何が大切なのか、そういうことをなんかこういう会の機会にですね、見識ある先生方からコメントいただければ我々としてもありがたいかな。で、私はどちらかというとですね、小菅オナ先生、ドクター小菅オナ先生の意見に近い、人の体とか人のあれっていうのは場所、人によってそれぞれ違うので、医者のお話で例えておっしゃってましたけれども、それぞれ違うということですね。私がこの日本において非常に誇るべきというか、自慢していいのかなと思ってるのは、今インバウンドというトゥーリストがアウトサイドからたくさん来てます。で、日本でよく言われるいいなと言われてる点は、非常に親切だと、非常に心遣いが細やかだと。特に今東京とか大阪ではなくて地方に結構外国人の方行かれてます。そこに行くとビレッジ、村だとか、結構年配の方々が非常に親切な対応を取る、それが非常に思い出になるというようなことで、ぜひ日本に住んでみたいというような声もたくさん聞こえてます。ちょっと視点がちょっと違うんですけども、そういったことも日本人で自慢するのは下手くそなんですけど、そういったことも世界に誇ってもいいのかなと私自身は思いました。で、お聞きしたいのはメッセージ、子どもたちに対してのメッセージですね。それをちょっといただきたいと思っています。以上です。
Okay, I'm going to have to rely on others because my machine is not working. So who wants to go first?
There was a question for me, so I can jump in.
Just go
perhaps. I will answer the last bit first. So I have a 14-year-old at home, and I was telling Professor Andres Rodriguez Poza that during those ages, in my youth, United States was the cultural hegemony that we looked up to. The bands, the music, the way one was supposed to dress, McDonald's having burgers and all that. Now I'm looking at my stepdaughter and all of her friends. All they are interested in is Japan and Korea. I mean, unbelievable interests they have in every cultural element that is attached to Japan and to Korea. Korea more so about music, but Japan more the visual aspect of it. So they, the first country that she wants to visit at the first occasion she gets is definitely Japan. Now cycling back to an optimistic message towards future, I will go with the motto that we used in Istanbul campaign back in 2024, that the future is rooted in the local. And I think that's quite important because you cannot sell a narrative about a country only that you can tell different stories about different localities of that country. This is the second time I'm in Osaka within the last 12 months. And I have to admit, with no offense to anyone from Tokyo, but I like Osaka better than Tokyo. I wouldn't know this before coming here the first time, I must say, because there is this pairment you have in your mind. If you go to France, it has to be Paris. If you go to England, it has to be London. If you go to Japan, it has to be Tokyo. But obviously, that's not the case, because in every small locality that you visit as a tourist, or when you are traveling for business, the kind of experience you have of that country will alter dramatically, right? So from tourists' perspective, I think we can look at our own countries and see okay, so what do I have here that is so unique about these individual places that I can combine into a whole story rather than having this urban stigma over one or few places?
All right,
Probably.
so all good things need to come to an end, unfortunately, and we're coming close to the end of our time. Unless there's a very quick question from the audience. Anyone wants to ask a... No? We have one quick question that it's a challenging question coming from online. So what happens if our cities and regions now become sustainable and we need to go into outer space? Do we need to think about sustainability in outer space, and what are the challenges that we have there? Quick question, if anyone wants to go in, quick answer, 30 seconds answer.
Yeah, I really want to go to space by myself at first. And yeah, so thinking of technology, science fiction becomes reality, and every science fiction things becomes reality in a decade or like that. So we really want to catch up as a technology and also mind and psychologically or as a city, region. So yeah, we really want to go that direction.
Professor Ichigawa, I thought you got the microphone to answer this challenging question.
Well, just when I talk about only 30 seconds, well, maybe I need the important word is the trade-offs. This word is very, so many meanings. Whenever talking about future of megacity or future of remote areas, well, sometimes some trade-offs there. And not only that, talking about sustainability, focusing on environmental issues, new development versus, well, environmental protection. So many trade-offs. So I have to explain about, first of all, what is a trade-offs. But at the same time, we have to think about any cases we have trade-offs. And finally, the answer to his question is, what's a good this time? Is a good time to see people from all over the world to find different ideas and cultures. That is only one issue I have to say about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I wouldn't like to end up this fascinating debate without giving everyone 20 seconds to give your main takeaway from this session. And I'm going to start in reverse order. So I'm going to start with Tomohiro Fukuzawa. 20 seconds, what is your main message?
Yes, so Expo is very, very good chance to go overseas, like go overseas to exchange many opinions or thinking way or scenario like that. And for me, it's very good to have this kind of session. I always go in a tech session, so never think about sustainability so much. So I personally want to go more in different world too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Osgeona, please.
Well, I will repeat myself. I think the future is rooted in the local.
Okay, is that all or?
That's about it. So whatever question we are interested in with regards to urban space or regional systems, we have to have a very, very localized perspective, I believe.
Okay, thank you very much. Claire Chabby.
I think that it's a message in common. We need to join force to become sustainable. And it always begins locally, regionally. And so joining forces means also find a way to work together, to live together. And of course, the key condition is to make our environment preserved. So this is a common value that we, I guess, have a whole to defend.
Okay, Hiro Ichigawa, please.
Well, if I say one word, maybe the expectation of the future of change of Osaka's interpretation for people from the viewpoint of global, regional, local, especially for global settings. This is an important time. You have a good chance to see the world for half a year. But after that, how you can do as a position of a national important city. Finally, some local connections. Important, wow, maybe some good connection to the Kobe or Kyoto, Nara, how you can do that? This is my question about expectation.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm just going to wrap up very quickly, because I'm going to start by thanking everyone who made the effort, all the experts to come here, sometimes from very, very far away, to be with you, to the sponsors, to the Agenda 2025 and to the Expo. But above all, to all of you that came to this room today, because we are the experts in theory, we are presenting and discussing the vision, but the future is not in our hands. It's not that as experts we can inform, we can guide people, we can give people, firms, decision makers advice. But the future lies not in what we are saying, lies in what you do with your ideas and what you hear here at the Expo and elsewhere. So the future is in your hands. So my challenge to all of you is first to thank you for coming, but then not to just go out and forget about what you heard yesterday. Use it, as you heard today, use it, transform it in order to make sure that in whatever you do in life, whether you are as normal citizens or entrepreneurs or consultants or in government, to make transformations, to use the knowledge that you're acquiring here at the Expo, in the pavilions, in the Agenda 2025, and go and make changes to make sure that in a world that suffers from many, many challenges, that looks in many ways darker than what it was 10, 15 years ago, but also offers a lot of opportunities, you grasp those opportunities with both hands, use them, transform them to make a world that is better, that is far more sustainable, and that is the well-being for us, for our children and our grandchildren, would be increased as a result of what you do from coming to this Expo over here. Thank you very much once again. Enjoy the rest of the Expo, and see you next time.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. Pose, and all the panelists for such inspiring exchange of ideas. And also I'd like to thank our audience for giving out such meaningful questions and comments. 皆さん、今一度大きな拍手をお送りください。いい感じです。